Good evening, everyone. We are the Group 7 and we will be discussing Art Nouveau. What is Art Nouveau? Art Nouveau, from the French New Art, is the name that was given in France and Belgium at the end of the 19th century to what we now call modernism. That is, it is one of the many names that this aesthetic trend, born in Europe and the United States, received during the period of the fin de siècle, end of the century, and Belle Epoque, beautiful name, that is between 1890 and 1910 approximately. Other names for the same movement, assigned depending on each country, are Jugendstil, Germany, Nieuwskans, Netherlands, Secession, Austria, Modern Style, United Kingdom and United States, and Floriali, Italy. In general, all these terms have in common the idea that a new, young art was made, adapted to the industrial age and the contemporary world, and far removed from the prevailing traditions until then, academicism, historicism or eclecticism, or rupturism, realism or impressionism. Art Nouveau was an ornamental style of art that flourished between the 1890s and 1910 throughout Europe and eventually North America. It was characterized by its use of long, smooth flowing lines as it was a deliberate attempt to create a new style free of the imitative historicism that dominated much of the 19th century art and design. Art Nouveau was a phenomenon of the Western world and originating in France and Germany at the end of the 19th century. Art Nouveau, architectural design exemplified by Antonio Gaudí's emblematic temple La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, Spain. Art Nouveau was aimed at modernizing design, seeking to escape the electrical historical styles that had previously been popular. It later made its way to North America, inspiring design ideas in companies such as Tiffany and Co.
Art Nouveau was the first style to stop looking backwards in history for ideas, taking inspiration instead from what it saw around it, in particular, the natural world. Artists drew inspiration from both geometric and forms. Art Nouveau can be described as free-flowing motion of sinuous asymmetric lines. Alphonse Mocha was acclaimed as a painter and decorative artist producing many Nouveau-style paintings, illustrations, advertisements, postcards, and design. Art Nouveau shared certain features with Romanticism and Pre-Raphaelites, the Symbolist, and the arts and crafts movement, although each differed in various ways. For example, unlike Symbolist painting, Art Nouveau has a distinctive visual look, and in contrast to the artisan-oriented arts and crafts movement, Art Nouveau artists readily employed new materials and did not turn their backs on mass-produced or machined surfaces. Art Nouveau was characterized by the following. First, strong inspiration in nature for its forms, especially in the vegetal combined with materials typical of the industrial era, such as steel and glass. Second, preference for curved line and asymmetry, as well as by the aestheticization of the motifs far from a realistic representation. Third, a certain fascination for exotic motifs like oriental designs, as well as graceful and delicate female figures. Fourth, tendency to sensuality and eroticism, and feel all the available space of the work horror vacui. Fifth, undertake own artistic techniques such as mechanical reproduction, woodcut, poster, and so on. Lastly, the hierarchy between major arts and minor or decorative arts disappears, thus a democratization of art and beauty.
One of the most representative works of Art Nouveau were The Kiss on Year 1908 by Gustav Klimt, The Dream of the Pomegranate on Year 1913 by Felice Casorate, Cupid at the Costume Ball on Year 1887 by Franz Stock, Maiden Fountain on Year 1931 by Joseph Limone Bruguera, The Goddess on Year 1909 by Joseph Clary Ayats, Hex on Year 1896 by Philip Wolfers. Art Nouveau in architecture represented a major break with European tradition. It abandoned the church and the palace and was dedicated to the plaza, museum, dwelling, theater, or office building. The basic idea is that architecture should face a restart and should reflect the economic values of capitalism in its productive forces. This implied the more profitable use of traditional materials such as stone, brick, wood, and the incorporation of new materials such as cast iron, glass, and cement. Some of the most representative architectural works of Art Nouveau are the facade of Casa Batlló by Antonio Gaudí, the building of the Central Train Station in Prague by Joseph Fanta, the Otto Wolff Building in Buenos Aires by Martin F. Renault.
Facts you might not know about Art Nouveau. Ornaments, unusual colors and shapes inspired by nature. Art Nouveau not only opened the door to 20th century, but also to experimental work and modern trends in art. Different designations in different countries. At the turn of the century, this artistic style impacted almost all domains of human creativity. It influenced painting, music and poetry, shaped sculpture, architecture, and furniture design, and inspired jewelry and fashion alike. Inspiration from botanical illustrations or Japanese woodblock printing, lily, iris, tulip, water lily, or poppy, the flowers that typically adorn Art Nouveau. Vases also inspired artists. Before the invention of photography, botanical illustration was the only way to visually capture plant species and other organisms. A combination of craft, emotion, and beauty. Industrial products don't always have to be simple and purely functional. This is something the members of the British arts and crafts movement thought too. In the second half of the 19th century, they countered the Industrial Revolution by returning to the folk traditions and craftsmanship of medieval masters. The British textile designer William Morris came up with the decorative and floral patterns, which later became the leitmotif of the Art Nouveau applied art. Art Nouveau first emerged as decorative style and only later developed into a new form of fine art and architecture. It contributed to blurring the boundaries between fine and applied arts. The father of Gustav Klimt was a goldsmith after all, which inspired the painter to use gold on the decorative surfaces of his portraits.
Linearity and colors contributed to the creation of meanings. Art Nouveau painters and artists often despised sketch drawings. The shape in paintings was mainly defined by drawing clear lines on a flat 2D surface with the absence of shading. The elements of rippling lines evoking the impression of movement or arabesque, a linear artistic decoration prevailed in paintings, decorative arts, and new urban buildings. Another source of clean lines was women's hair. As Art Nouveau developed alongside symbolism, the symbolic meaning of colors also came into play at that time. Yellow was perceived as a symbol of matter, the sun, life, and joy, while blue and green were associated with supernatural qualities and white represented a lost hope. No material escaped the attention of architects. Art Nouveau originated mainly in large cities like Vienna, Paris, or Prague. That is why people usually saw it at places like railway stations, restaurants, and cafes. In architecture, completely new and often revolutionary methods of buildings and construction emerged. Among other things, it was new construction materials like steel or reinforced concrete. Glass also received more attention, and in new buildings, narrow windows were replaced with large glass panels. Art Nouveau stained glass or mosaic became standard features too. During the Art Nouveau period, architects were influenced by the Gesamtkunstwerk, a work of art that combined several types of art like architecture, painting, music, and poetry.